Okay, hello and welcome. It is a sunny Saturday here in Toronto. Today we're going to be looking into styled components. We're going to do a little deep dive into that. For those who don't know what styled components are or what they're for, it's a strategy for styling React components. So there's many different ways to do this. React is a very flexible, very dynamic library. I'd say almost too dynamic. There's almost too many ways to do things. Style components is definitely a very popular strategy that a lot of companies have adopted. I've used this professionally in previous jobs at very large corporations. So this is not some little library that if you're thinking, why should I learn this? This is very much a industry standard tool. That said, JavaScript being JavaScript, there's lots of industry standards these days, so it's not the only way to do this problem, solve this problem, but it's certainly something that's it's worth learning if you're looking to be a React or full stack developer. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up my code editor. As always, this is a code along, and I would encourage you guys to join us on this journey. I'll also be posting this code intermittently on GitHub, on our code mentor on GitHub. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a folder. As always, we'll get started. Call this styled components. Now, I am going to use Create React App. I think I mentioned this is a relatively new technology for me. I usually spin it up myself, but in the name of time and jumping through some of the hoops, we're going to automatically install a bunch of things. So if we head over to the Create React App site. Is it okay if I use TypeScript with everyone today, or is that too much of a leap for some people? You guys let me know. Where is it? I have a documentation website. Here we go. Maybe we'll just stick to JavaScript. Just keep it simple. Okay, so this is like a little library command line utility that allows you to spin up a whole bunch of different things and run the project. It's basically boilerplate and running through a bunch of boilerplate. So the first thing we're going to do is install it. So yarn add create React app like that. Pretty sure this is how you do it. And then if we go yarn create React, if I put the dot, I think that should just do it here. Okay. They might be asking for us to install this globally, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I think you have to. Yeah? I think you have to give it a name, don't you?
Yeah, like, I know, but that's the problem. Is like I don't want to have it as a submodule, as like a subfolder in here. So I'm actually going to install this globally. I'm going to go yarn global add create React app. I'm going to delete all of this. That should allow us to automatically install it in this folder here, which is what we want. Taking its sweet time. It's been a while since I installed anything globally, so might have a bit of a delay.
Can you say briefly why that is?
Why it's going to take time? Yeah, so
why you haven't installed globally.
Yeah, so I installed it before, and it created what you saw there with like the node modules and whatnot. But then when I tried to run the Create React app in the folder here, it said it already existed. Like there's already some stuff. This directory already contains files that conflict. So what I'm doing is I'm installing Create, which I think you're supposed to with Create React app. It's like this global tool that you install in your computer, and then we'll see in a second.
When you said it's been a while since I installed anything globally, I was wondering why that was so.
Yeah, so the reason why I typically don't install things globally for npm is because it gets messy when you, as a developer, will be developing something on your local computer, and you will unconsciously, or you'll forget, you'll just assume that a certain technology exists because it's on your computer. And then you'll post that code on GitHub, and you'll expect other people, or you'll deploy that to the production environment and assume the production environment has these modules, but they might not. And that's the issue. Is that
Okay, so installing globally lets you code with an unspoken assumption that someone else won't know. And
yeah, because you can
the other way
actually,
would be to explicitly put it in your code. Is that the other way?
yeah. So in Node.js, and I don't know why they've done it this way, to be honest, I don't think it's the greatest idea, is that you can install these global dependencies, and then from your code, you can require a global dependency like you'd require a local Node module. There's no distinction. And I think that's a problem with Node, and the way Node works, and that there's no, like, I think it creates a lot of bugs. So that is a really good clarification, Marcy. Thank you for bringing that up.
So if you want your code to be robust and
Mhm.
predictable to somebody else, you explicitly code in a local. I forgot the vocabulary.
Node modules, yeah. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, JavaScript, like Node.js, doesn't determine a difference between the two. It could be a locally installed Node modules, or it could be globally installed. It doesn't differentiate. So that's why I tend to move away from using and installing global dependencies, because
Is that considered now industry best practice? With that way, your way?
I don't know if it's propagated across to the industry. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I'm speaking from personal experience working at over 10 different companies. Like, I really wouldn't recommend installing global dependencies.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I don't know what their recommendation is here. They don't seem to have an installation step, which is usually the first thing you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Interesting. If you're using something, would it not be in the package JSON as a dependency? And then if somebody,
Well, that's the thing, is by installing something globally, it's in the global package JSON.
oh, I see the problem. Okay.
So yeah.
So you're gonna, yeah, and your GitHub, the repo that you're going to put online is going to have your local package JSON dependencies. So you actually, okay, yeah.
Correct. Okay, so this is working, which is good. This might even be using, oh no, it's using Yarn, that's good. So this is going to install a bunch of different things for us. So it's running through installing React scripts. It's created a package JSON. Look at all this stuff that this has generated.
The screen on my tiny laptop makes the print tiny. Did you type create React app followed by a dot, meaning current directory? Is that what
That is correct. I've tried to zoom in as much as I can. If I zoom in more, it's a little tough. I don't personally use Create React App in my projects purely because there's too much boilerplate. And I also feel like it's one of these situations where if you don't know what it's doing, you really should understand this code and everything it's just done. But for the purposes of today, rushing through webinars, I'm going to keep it quick. So we get a couple of nice things from Create React App as it's documenting here. We've got a start, to start dev. We've got build, so that's typically your production level assets. We have a test, and then we have the eject. Now, what eject does is this turns it into a non-create React app environment. So we're not using create React app anymore. Okay, so we're actually going to go yarn start and see what this does. I'm not going to use Chrome because I hate Chrome. Firefox. So I'm going to switch to Firefox. privacy issues. Okay, so this is what we get straight off the bat. Right. So if we come in to, you can see here we've got a whole bunch of different things. Let's break this down. So we've got these CSS files. So we're not going to use CSS. We're going to use styled components. We've got test files, which we're looking into. This is probably using Enzyme under the hood. So you can look into that. We've got functional components and service worker to do some fancy stuff, which we probably don't need. Some more test stuff. So there's a bunch of things in here that we don't really need. In fact, I want to try and comment all this out and see if it still functions, because I don't want to fill this example up with boilerplate. Okay. That's breaking. That's really annoying. This is why I don't use Create React App personally, because it installs a bunch of stuff that, you know. So if you'll forgive me, I'm going to leave that there. I don't exactly know why they're using that. I'd have to go and read the code. I personally don't like this where everything is set up in the root directory. I like to create a components directory. Typically for React stuff, I create components and pages. Okay, so this is how I like to do it. Then I have, say, app index dot or app.jsx export const app equals. This I like to do components. There's many different modes with this. Okay, so the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install styled components. Go yarn. This is going to be a dev dependency, not a production requirement. Styled components. So while that's installing, let's have a look at what styled components is, how one might work with it. What's the motivation? And so we can see with this situation, and Create React App is doing something fancy with Webpack behind the scenes, where it's you're able to import these CSS files like this. I think it's probably doing some sort of mangling on the class names. Maybe not. Maybe it's just direct. Let's have a look. Okay, so they're using direct class names. So this is kind of the approach to a styled component, in that you declare what HTML type it is, what HTML element you want to use. Now you can actually use your own custom stuff here as well. And then you write a bunch of CSS that applies to this, and it generates a React component. So this generates a very specific styled button that has all of these properties and styles assigned to it. And what this will do is will generate some fancy class name that you don't need to use or worry about. And this gets handled at the production level. So when we want to use this, we simply just use it like we would a normal component. Right, now we know this is an anchor. Right, it's created an anchor tag, and we know that the anchor has things like hrefs and targets and rels. So that's kind of the benefit of using this. Right? And then you can also pass in your own custom properties as well.
Could you please remind me, I've forgotten, what's the significance of wrapping it in backtick?
Well, the backtick is just how they've decided to make this library work. So the backtick, everything inside the backtick is your CSS. So this applies specifically to this component. It's the same thing as coming in with our CSS and writing, say, this, right? And then using this class in the app header like this. So that's essentially what this is doing. It is coming in here and saying, and we'll write this out, and I'll show you guys what this looks like as we begin to use our own components. But that really is the approach to styled components. Is writing the CSS inside JavaScript, which allows you, obviously, because this is a computed string, you can actually pass in variables and themes and various other things in this. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit more. So yeah, it's a very, as I mentioned, it's a very popular library with some pretty powerful functionality that we're going to explore today. So let's go ahead and let's get some of the most basic stuff up and running. I'm going to try and remove this stuff, and hopefully it won't break anything. This index page, change this index to components/app. That's the service worker. Okay. Hopefully, if we remove these, hopefully, gonna clean all this up for us, so we don't have to worry about all these extra confusing pieces of. There we go. So it looks like it. Hopefully there's no. Oh, there's an error. Is that not? That's why I like to use TypeScript personally, because it gets rid of a lot of these errors. The bare bones. Report React from React. Great, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these other things that we don't need. Like tests we don't need. Great, so now I have a very minimal setup. Right, so we've got just this app. I might even turn, yeah, we'll just leave it as this. In the index, we can get rid of all this stuff. Right, so now we've got a very basic React app. Just one component, one render, nothing else. There's no other fancy things here. In fact, I think we could probably even delete all of this public stuff as well. Okay, so now we're starting from scratch, which is what I want. Does anybody have any questions moving what we're about to jump into before we explore this interesting framework? All the files should be here. I'm gonna try and split my screen. That might hopefully help in illustrating some of the stuff that I'm working on. Bring that underneath. Move Firefox actually. 3000s. Okay. Now we are cooking with gas. So how do we work with style components? Let's start with a really basic example of the header. It's header here. Heading 1. So let's call this, say, a title. Say const title. This becomes the name of your component, and always remember to make sure it's capitalized. So in React, in JSX, right, you don't, lowercase is variables, and capital letters is a reference to a component, which you can then use like this. So that's really what we want to do today, is to turn this h1 into a title like this. The const title equals, and we're going to go styled. There we go, it's imported it for us automatically. Dot. Now the dot is where we allow, we can, there's a whole bunch of different options here, but every single HTML element that you would expect should be here. In our case, it's going to be h1. So if I simply just do backtick with no styles, right, this shouldn't change anything. It should be a standard h1 element. Right? Inspect this. Zoom in. Let's do better. You can see here. Now, see how it's added this SC dash, like this random code here, these classes? That's styled components doing its thing. So this here, right, is related to probably this one here. I don't know what exactly the second one is from, but this is generating this CSS class. That's what style component is doing under the hood. This is doing some and generating some styles. If we look into this style tag here, right, doesn't look like there's any styles generated at the moment because we're not, we don't have any styles. So let's go ahead and say change the color to red. Okay, so let's again look at the HTML element to see if anything's changed. So nothing's changed. This is the same. This is changed. I don't know what this one is, but the actual name of the. Now if we go into our style. Okay, so it's this GX. I was wrong. It's actually not the SC class. It's this one here. Whatever this is, right? That's what's creating this color red that we see here. So that's what it's doing under the hood. Very simple. Right, there's no CSS files here. There's no magic going on. So I'm going to pause for 1 second, and I want this to, because this is the underlying principle behind styled components. So I'm going to pause for a second to see if you guys have any questions around how we've got to this state. Is this making sense?
I can see that you're showing us that though the Create React App put that there, we could have typed it ourselves and not used Create React App. Is that what you?
Yes, totally. So we've kind of moved out of Create React App land, where we're not, the Create React App, as we saw, created CSS files. So we've gone ahead and removed all those. So as you can see, my architecture is just components app.jsx and an index.js file. That's it. There's no other JavaScript.
So you use the aspect of Create React App that creates your file folder structure.
Mm-hmm. What it also does, Create React App also, and it's still doing, is allowing us to run this dev server. So I believe it's doing some Webpack handling under the hood.
Okay, thank you.
And I didn't want to jump into that today because that's a whole world of itself and kind of a distraction for people. I really wanted to focus on styled components, but that's a whole other topic that we can look into, how to optimize Webpack builds, and yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions on how we've got to this red header? Making sense so far? Cool. So let's try maybe a little bit more complex example. Why don't we try and do some hovers? So if you come from a Sass background, you'll notice that we're using this ampersand. Now what this ampersand is the current selector, where we currently are in CSS. So in this case, it's H1. Or this particular H1, I should say. Let's try and add another H1 and see if that affects it. So this is a H1. Let's add another H1. Okay, so you can see that this here has zoom into it. This one has the class applied, and this one does not. So that's the benefit of using style components, is they're very scoped. These styles become very scoped to whatever you're working with, which is very nice. So this @ symbol is going to say for any of these components that we're currently at, if we hover. So we can go deeper into this. So let's say color blue, and we'll see if this works. I'd expect if I move my mouse, and there we go. So already we're starting to see some pretty nice stuff here. We've got some nesting functionality. All right, what if we try something a little more complex, like so we want to have a card component. Oh, my computer's being very slow right now. Apologies for that. Now, what we say const card equals. Yeah, wow. My typing isn't even showing up.
I just think the screen's frozen. It's frozen for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, screen's frozen for me too.
Just gonna see if it's something killing my computer. Just Docker.
Yeah, it could be your connection. Yeah, your connection is your audio is a bit choppy there, so it could be.
Yeah,
Connection at the moment.
it's a little bit challenging. Apologies about that. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you
probably
hear me?
the screen, maybe if you try stop presenting and
Oh,
present
my whole
again,
computer is
refresh it.
freezing up, so I can't seem to do anything right now.
Oh, okay.
Apologies, team. Yeah, that might fix it. See if this fixes it. Hopefully this will fix. Celebrity Josh. Okay, that seems to have. Yeah, I think sometimes the screen capture from Google Chrome really eats a lot of memory, which is unfortunate. I'll try that again. You guys can hear me now? It's smooth?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. It's very challenging. I don't know why it does that.
Let's go. Let's try to do a refresh, and yeah, it should be fine.
Cool. Okay, so what I was saying before, what I want to look into is how do we do like nested stuff. So to really play with this Sass idea of this ampersand. So in our case, let's go styled to a div for a card. And we'll come in here and we'll go say border radius, say 10 pixels, say border 1 pixel, solid EE. Maybe we'll go to slight drop shadow, box shadow. Zero 10 pixels, 10 pixels. RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.2. Let me see what this looks like. Yeah. Okay, so we've got this little, in fact, I might even remove that border. Add some padding. All right, so we've got like a little card component here, right?
That's cool. Kind of pops out with the box shadow. Is that right?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, so let's add a H2 to this, right? Or maybe we call this a subtitle. Const subtitle equals styled dot H2. We'll say font family, say Arial. Just keep it basic for now. Change this to a subtitle. Subtitle. Okay. So the subtitle has been styled on its own with this Arial, but let's say we want to center this. We only want to center it in the context of a card, this card element that we're seeing, this box. So what we can do is we can actually come in here and select other elements. We can say H2, we can text line center. I don't know if the Emmet CSS shortcuts work exactly perfectly in there. Style. Is that not working? Maybe it doesn't work like this. Maybe not. I thought that would have.
Interesting. I got a question on this one, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to style the H2, which is in the subtitle.
I was putting it in the wrong place. It's supposed to be in the card.
Yeah, that's what I was confused about. Yeah.
That was why it wasn't working. There we go. So H2 now has this centered, but only for when it's inside the card. So that's an example of how we would style something like this. Right? What if we want more complex stuff? All right, so if we go back to the documentation, like or rather a very common thing that we'll see in React itself is adding custom properties to our component. Add a button, right? This. We'll change this to something more real, like a sign up. To sign up today, say thanks for reading. If you're interested, please sign up below to get our weekly email. Okay. Add an input field, and we'll change this to a capital B for capital button. This will be a custom element that we write. So const button styled dot button. This, and we'll say border none, border radius. Give it the same border radius, so 10 pixels. Say background. Say 33 FF88. It's like a nice little blue color. We'll say color white. And then in here, we'll say sign up. padding 10 pixels. Text transform uppercase. So just really getting specific with our styles on this. Font weight to bold. Okay. So what we're gonna look at with this, oh, that's right, props. So we might have this as our default button, but what if we want to have like a different type of button, like a success button? Right? So this is where we can start to look at our documentation and really see how, like they've got their own button component. So they've got this ability where if you run a function inside this, then those props get passed in, and you can actually write some custom CSS that applies to this. So let's try this methodology. So props, we'll say props is the argument. We'll say if there's props dot say secondary. Now again, if you're using React, be careful with this. If you're using TypeScript, there's a way to type all of this, so you're not just targeting random arbitrary numbers and properties. So if there's going to be prop secondary supplied, then right, we use it with the ampersand and CSS. So that seems to be kind of extra function that's exposed by our style components. I'm going to import that here. So CSS and in here, say background. We'll change this to say the other way around. FF88, green color. Okay, so by default, we're using this blue. But what if we change this to secondary? There we go. So we see that it's actually running this very cleverly. It's running this function, this backtick, or what they call them. What are they called? I forget the term. Template, tag template, I think is the technical term. I forget the name slips me now. But it's running this stuff here, and it's injecting the properties into the string, template string. That's what they're called. It's injecting this this function with these properties and allowing you to write some really custom stuff. So as you can imagine, there's no limits to what you can do with this. It's a very powerful way of building out these styles and conditional styles.
Hey Chris, could you explain the CSS?
So I'll pause for a second.
See, like secondary, you pass in secondary with the button component. You call the button on line 49. You're passing the secondary as a prop to the button.
Mm-hmm.
So then line 35, so I can see prop secondary. And what's the and CSS part? Where's this?
Okay, so great question. So what this is saying is you're saying if, there's another way of writing this. If prop secondary and CSS this that's essentially the same way of writing this. And then this let me see. This should be the same thing. Yep. So that's just another way of writing this. It's saying if props dot secondary, then return this.
Right. Cool. I was confusing the and as part of the condition. Like it was a.
Yeah. Well, that's another way of writing it. So you can say return. The way JavaScript works in its computation is it's going to run this first. And if this is not true, then it's not going to run anything else in the chained and. So this won't get returned. This won't even get run. So it's like a trick or a shortcut way of doing if this, then return this. We see this all the time in React. So we'll say, for example, use state. We'll have like a little use state thing. We might say like, I don't know, test. Put it to false. And we'll say in here, test. If the test is true, if test is true, and span test is true. So this is a really common way in React of doing, not just React, in JavaScript in general. That's a very common way of, but it tends to be used often in React. Typically, if you're writing more functional stuff, I'll do more like if test, then you then stuff in here. But in React templates, this is a shortcut way.
Got it.
And it's not specific to React. Like this is just how JavaScript processes and executes itself. So it does the first. If you've got a big long chain in JavaScript, so if condition 1, right, say and condition 2 equals something, and condition 4, condition 3, and not condition 3. So what this will do is we'll execute this one first, and if this is not true, then none of these get called. If it is true, then it tries to run this one. And if condition 2 equals something, then it will run this one. But if this is not, if this condition 2 is something else, then condition 3 doesn't even get checked.
Right, but for me, like all these conditions, they have to be an expression which is going to be a true or false. Right.
That is correct.
It's going to be the
Now,
first one.
well, not necessarily. So this is where JavaScript gets strange. So let's say condition 1 equals an empty string. Right? What do you guys think? Let's presuppose that condition 2, so condition 1, condition 2 equals something, and condition 3 equals false. Right? So condition 2 equals something, yes, not condition 3. So condition 3 equals false, therefore we turn it back into true, therefore it is true. Condition 1 is this empty string. Do we think this will run?
I have a feeling that JavaScript's going to
We
take
think
an
that will
empty
run.
string as false. It's going to.
Correct. Grab all this. It's in the console. See what happens. Condition 1, condition 2, condition 3. Nope. No log statement. If I refresh and I set condition 1 to some random thing, it just run. So what that means is that in JavaScript, and there's a whole bunch of other things. So what it does is when you chain things together and you put it in an if statement like this, JavaScript converts everything to truthy values. Right? So false is obviously going to return false. Null, undefined. Right? These are also conditions which will cancel the if condition. What are some other weird ones? 0. What do we think about that? Do we think that will work? I'm going to comment out these other ones for a second. Just look at condition 1. Do we think 0 will work?
No, 0 will false.
0 is false, right? So if 0 console.log 0. That doesn't work. The reason why it's doing this and what it's doing under the hood is it's actually casting it as a Boolean. So you can test this yourself. If you go Boolean and then you go 0, that's false. Boolean empty string, false. Boolean 1, 12, right? That returns true. What are some other ones? Null is false. Undefined is false. -1, it's true. 0 is not. So that's something to watch out for. Just be mindful of. 0 actually is not. It's not valid. That's why we have null. Right, null says there's actually no value placed in this. So if you want value, if you want your, yeah. So there's a bunch of things in here, and then I think TypeScript introduces some null checks and 0 checks that makes it a little bit more intuitive. I personally think that Boolean 0 should return true. I think this is stupid, personally, but that's just me. I'm sure there were reasons why it happened that way. Keep in mind, JavaScript was invented a long time ago and was not developed. Like JavaScript was not developed to be what it is today. It just simply wasn't. JavaScript was something that was kind of hacked together to, provide some options for a very novel idea on the internet. And it's only as of the recent 4 years, like 2016, that JavaScript has seen major updates. So that's why a lot of people have some qualms with how JavaScript handles things. That was a very long-winded answer to how this works. What we're doing here is, so now that we know all this, we can say if this is true. If this is not true, don't do anything. If it is true, then return this.
Tristan.
Yeah.
So now you have props.secondary. So if we want more props like primary, we'll repeat this whole block again and add conditions accordingly.
Depends. So depends if the props are competing. For example, you might have, in our case, you might say if props secondary. This is why I don't like using JavaScript, because there's no autocomplete. You might say return, or you know what? You might even do something. Let's see, like this. Nah, that's fine. We'll try it. Let color equal. We'll say this primary background like this. We'll actually take this off. This will be the default color. Or rather, let background BG. If props are secondary, we'll say BG equals screen. Right. If props to tertiary, then you might say 8833. The hex code's right. 8833. Or rather FF. Right, so I've got that kind of I don't know what you call that. Right. So the pink is tertiary. And then you might say return CSS background. And then we'll just simply place the BG like this. So look at this, right? So So now we're actually chaining these together. Pretty cool, right? And you might have a more advanced situation. You might say it's a switch. So switch props.color. Might say case primary. It's also going to be the default. Color, also BG equals this blue. Let BG again equals the blue. Might say case secondary. We probably need these breaks on these. Breaks. Secondary BG equals. This is just another way of doing this. Okay. The same kind of approach, except one uses the tertiary and secondary like this, and the other, which is what we're doing now, is going to be, instead of this, you're going to go color equals. Depending on how you want your component to work, you can do one of these two methods like this as an example. So this is an example of how this is looking. We have, of course, the tertiary. Okay. So that's another approach. We've kind of got these three approaches now. This is the first one we looked at, where we're just returning something based on the props like this. The second one is the individual stuff. This. So, approach one. Approach two. Then approach three. So it really comes down to how do you want your, and of course you could also do both. So you could actually do, if you wanted to, you could combine this together and say, if there's no color provided, but there is a secondary or a tertiary, you could even override it. So it really comes down to how you want your component to work. Personally, I think I would vow for this approach. Approach two. I like that. I like the idea of having secondary as like a Boolean flag as a property, as opposed to color equals. But then the approach of color equals, this might be nicer if you have like, this is computed somehow, or this is dynamic, right? Of course, you could still use a computed property and go, you know, type true, where type equals secondary or tertiary. That's also totally valid. So you know that could get the same kind of result as this. I'm digressing into some pretty fancy stuff here, but it's not really necessary. Just know that whatever you're passing into your props, whether it's through this approach or through the Boolean approach, you can get very custom with how you want your background to be determined, and you might not even do it this way. You might even put it like this, the background before, and then you might simply just forget about this, forget about the breaks, all this. It's simplified actually. Simply go return. We've already got the background here. We can do that with approach two. Return. Simply return. So that's another way of. I was not defined. debugging. And I think we forgot to close off something somewhere. Test. Where's that coming from? Yeah. Okay, so we've got these kind of two approaches, right? First one is this color blue. I don't know why the formatting is all funny. It's kind of annoying. It seems to have broken it somehow. Don't know why. It's unfortunate. Yeah, so the idea is we can have this basic one like this. Then we can do color equals secondary, and we can even do color equals tertiary. So a third button shows up like this. So this is how we can pass these properties to style. Now again, I've just prefixed this with background. That's what it is. That's what's killing it. It's that background there. I don't know why it's doing that, but VS Code issue. Technically, this is correct code. So you can return whatever you want from these props. It doesn't have to be for an individual CSS property. It could be a whole combination of different things. You might decide that you have a small thing, right? So you might decide, something else. We'll say props. Say props.small, and show you this other way of doing it. And we'll say height. We'll say 40 pixels. Whereas normally the height is up to 60 pixels. And we'll bring one of these down. So the tertiary, say small. Maybe not. Why is that? I feel like this background might be breaking it somehow. I'm going to. I thought we could do it with an individual property like this, but it looks like that's causing some problems. So I'm gonna go ahead and.
I think you need to add semicolon.
What, sorry? Thank you. Yes, thank you. Perfect. Great spotting tomorrow. I appreciate that. There we go. Sorry about that, team. Wasn't sure. It gets funny when you start combining CSS and JavaScript together. So now great. So that's all working. So we've got a small button here. Right? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you want to have small, it's 40, and you want this to be instead, you want this to be large. So you really can get very specific. Or maybe you want to have both. Maybe you want to have small and large. Small will say 30. We have 3 different types. The danger with this Boolean approach as opposed to something equals is, what if you have small and large on the same button? I think it's the order of preference of which one comes first. So I think it's the CSS, whatever comes last in the CSS. So some people don't like this approach and they say, well, actually, these are both referring to an attribute called size. So you would move it over to what we've done with the color, where we move away from approach 2 and we move into approach 3. But if you only have one, right, say you don't have a large one, for example, say it's just a small, right, then that's totally a valid approach. Just have this like that. Another really good example, yeah.
If you're doing something specific like the color, maybe it could be better to use the actually pass a prop called color like this.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, and then if you've got something that there's a few different styles, it's more of a higher level than just one specific thing like
Yes.
color. Like you had like secondary, right? That could be color, size, shading.
You can
all
actually
these different things.
chain a bunch of things together. Yeah.
For that, in that case, it would be better to have just pass in the
Or maybe a new
value.
maybe a new component altogether. So here's another thing, right, that we haven't spoken about, that styled components gives us the ability to do. So let's say we want to have a square button. If we go const square button. Now, what we've done before is we've gone styled dot button. But what if we want to reuse all of this stuff? How do we get all of this in here? Well, instead of going styled dot button, we're actually going to call styled like this, and we're going to pass in button that we created. Now I can override certain things. We can come in here and I can say border radius, right? 0. And let's use this. Let's turn our sign up button into a tertiary button. Oh dear. Ah yes, just need to finish that there. There you go. So it's still got the tertiary. It's still inherited all of the stuff that we got from the first button, but we've now overridden it. I mean, the way we do this is by calling it like this. Instead of going styled dot button, we're calling it with our custom component that we just created. So you get a lot of really interesting composability through styled components. You know, running through this webinar has rekindled my love for this. I'm really glad we're using this on Project CM. I'm going to pause for a second just to give people a break. We'll come back at about 11:30. I'm going to chill here for a bit. I just want to give you guys a chance to stretch and stand up and stretch your legs and whatnot. For those who are using styled components, what are your thoughts on it so far? Is there anything you think that we should cover today?
Hey, Tristan, so on the line 54, the CSS, is the CSS property of styled components? Because I saw you importing CSS.
Say that again. Is this the properties of styled components? I don't follow.
Yeah, the CSS backtick on the. Yeah.
Yes, this here. So that's coming from styled components.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
In fact, you probably, let's try it. If we're not doing anything fancy with this, with like @ symbols and all that sort of stuff, we might be able to return a string. Let's see. Let's see if it works. Hooray, we can. So that CSS, that CSS thing, I think will only really apply if you want to do fancy stuff in it. So if you want to, you can actually, this is a really, I'm just realizing how nice this library is. It's come a long way since I learned it too. Yeah, so you can actually just return a string. You don't even need CSS. The CSS will come in handy when you want to do like nested stuff and deeper things. But if you just want to do something basic, seems pretty good to me.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, it's really nice. Let's use a good example of this, right? Where we want that CSS nested. So in our card, let's create a property. Right, let's call this P. So P, just say center title, and we'll say CSS. Now this is where I think we need backtick CSS. Function. because what we're going to do here is a nested. We're going to use the @ symbol, at h2, and we're going to move the text align center. So by default, it won't do it. So the h2 should be over here. And then on our card, if we do center title, there you go. So let's test our theory by turning this back into a string. Plain string, no CSS. See if this still works. Oh, it does. Okay, I don't know what it's used for then. Let's have a look. The documentation search bar. Nope. Enable some JavaScript. Search CSS API reference. A helper function to generate CSS from a template literal with interpolations. You need to use this if you return a template literal with functions. Oh, I see. I see. So in here, if we actually returned a function, oops, this is where we have to use the CSS. If we just use standard thing, then we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there you go. Thanks for bringing that up.
No problem.
Yeah.
This is really interesting.
It's super interesting. Super interesting, super dynamic way. Now, of course, right, all of this stuff, you wouldn't put all of these in one file. You would break this out into its other files. That's a good question. What other questions have we got? Or for people who have been using this, like Susie, I think you've been using this for a while now. What are your thoughts on this? If you're with us, if you haven't gone on a break.
She said she needed to go somewhere. So.
Mm-hmm. No worries. Anybody else? Anybody else used this before and think that there's something we should cover? The next thing I want to look into is themes and how we do themes. That's going to apply to what we're doing here at Project CM. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone with this. Hopefully Folke is around. It'd be great if Folke. He asked me a question about this. See if he's. Anybody seen Folke today? I don't know if he's around. Yeah, I'm gonna ping him. Other components. Cool.
It just at the end, just out of interest. So I know that we're working on our project. We're working on bringing in implementing styled components.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's a big thing at the moment. Is there any pushes on our GitHub that we can look at some, real application of these styled components?
Great question.
Shane?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there have been some PRs, and I think Susie also did a couple of migrations. So
Okay.
I can send you, I think this radio and radio list is there. And there's a theme one as well. So, yeah. So actually, I'm also going through it because I need to start migrating as well. There's a ticket. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, so here you go. Here's a great
radio input.
Yeah. So what's Susie done? Let's do a PR review of Susie's work while she's not here.
Yeah.
She's gonna come in and go, oh crap, people have got code. We got styled input, display none. Okay, yeah, I see. Track span. So this is great. This is what we want people to be doing. I've noticed that there's been a couple of examples where we're not using this and we're using arbitrary values. For example, these here, they should probably be turned into a theme value. And the reason why is because we don't want to be replacing all of this stuff across the entire code base. It gets very messy if we want to, especially designs that are coming through. You know, we've got some great designs that Mark and Andrew have been working on. So, you know, things like colors, things like padding. So this stuff here, these heights, this should all be put into, you know, some kind of theme value. That way, we don't have to update this manually. So this stuff definitely should be put into theme value. Susie, if you're with us, feel free to speak up.
I'm going to send this recording to Susie. She's online.
So I might even put some notes on this after the webinar.
And so again, I suppose she's going to be calling these components. She's going to be using this component somewhere.
Yeah. So
where's
we see that here. So we've actually brought this out to a larger. Let's look at this file. So we've got this thing called a radio list that uses all of these. That uses these styles. So the way Susie's done this is she's broken this up into radio list styles, which I think is all of these, just exporting all of these styled components. There's no functionality going on here. So that's been really nice, is to have all these here. And then she's using those styled components in the actual functional component. So this is where the logic happens, where we've got the hooks and things like that. So it's actually a really nice way of the way she's done this it's pretty clean. We've got our TypeScript interfaces, and then she's using these styled components in real time. You know, radio list label, radio element, radio list small. Like she's bringing them into, and then of course this radio list, right? Then somebody can use this radio list and they don't have to worry about the styles. So that just automatically gets handled. And then, of course, if we want to, we could even wrap this radio list, you know, in its own styled component. So if we wanted to override it, we could go styled radio list and really create our own style for that. But we shouldn't be doing that. Ideally, this should all be, you know, it should be good to go. So this radio list div that she's created, that should have all the necessary styles required for everything that we need.
So what's the name of this file?
This is the
style,
PR.
Radio list styles.
This is radio list. Yeah. .styles.
So got like a file where it has all the styled components. That's a .styles, and then all those, the actual radio list component itself is exported from the other file, radio list.
Yep.
Right.
So this is following.
Okay.
Yeah. This is following like a file syntax that we use, where we often do the dot something. So dot like a style dot component. We don't tend to use components. Maybe we should. I don't feel like it's necessary. Components specifically, but I'll often do dot page or dot container. Or if we're on the back end, we'll do .entity or .resolver or .service. Very common. So in this case, it's .styles. So nice work, Susie, on that. Have you joined us yet? Is she back?
Susie said, "Oh my God, I hope it's not that bad."
No. So Susie, we were just talking about because we're about to jump into themes, and Shane asked, "Is there something we can look at for Project CM as a real life example?" And we just came up with your PR, and we were just doing a bit of a review, saying this is really good. In fact, I would even consider incorporating somehow like some standardized borders. So we could even have like props.themes.borders, right? And then this could even be incorporated into that, and then other things. So we shouldn't be accessing arbitrary values like this. So things like rems, things like height, that should be standardized. So we're coming from the Tailwind background, right? So in Tailwind, everything, we have these predefined heights and widths and JavaScript is disabled. But you remember where we came from with that, right? So we want to have that with this, is where, instead of saying, 2 pixel solid or padding 0.75, we just go padding small, right? So props.themes.padding.small, and we put that here. That way, when we want to change things, it changes everywhere.
Okay, what was that? Was that one of the main reasons for switching from Tailwind to styled components?
I forget who's. People were complaining about Tailwind and how it was a bit confusing to learn, and that's fair. Like Tailwind is a utilities-based thing, and you have to learn a lot of different classes. Whereas this is, you can read this. You can go, oh, I understand what this is doing, straight off the bat. So things like this would be another really great example where we shouldn't be referencing anything that's referencing arbitrary numbers or specific numbers. Then we should be turning into a theme value. So Susie, just be aware of that. So things like this is fine, like cursor pointer. That doesn't need to be turned into anything, but anything like this that is pertaining to the style, this is probably fine. I think that's very specific to this particular element, so that's probably fine. Like font size, like this should definitely be a theme prop, definitely. Yeah, so just something to keep in mind, and we're actually going to jump into that right now. So it's been a long time since I've done themes inside styled components. So I'm going to do a little bit of a refresh on how we get that working. So is it under basics or advanced? It's probably under advanced. Extending styles, past props. So we covered most of the things here. Attaching additional props. I don't know what that's doing. Oh, okay, cool. There you go. Look at that. So you can actually pass in specific properties to the components that you want to run. So in this case, it's a password, which is cool. Those who want to override some of the individual properties, it's a really nice way of doing it. I didn't know you could do that. It's a new feature. Very nice, very nice. So we wanted to look. Yeah, here we go. Theming. So how do we get this to work? So use a theme provider. A theme like this. Okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing. So this is getting passed in automatically as a prop. I'm wondering if this theme can somehow be, like, we don't have to do this. I'm wondering if that's. So they've got the normal button, and then the theme provider wraps around it. Oh, I see. The default. Okay, so let's try this. Let's go ahead and create like a lib folder. We'll call this, say, theme.ts or JS. And I think this just exports a plain old object, which is pretty nice, very flexible. Export even default, export default, and we'll say colors, and we'll say main. We'll grab those. All right, so got these colors. We might have, say, some other things like border radius, say 10. We might have sizes. So we might say small is 10 pixels, or rem. We should probably use rems. rem. Now that's the other thing, right? Is we should be setting this to base 10, which we'll get to in a second. So when I say tiny, this small might be 1.2. Medium might be 1.4. I have large 1.8. Realistically, that's probably more font size. Like large for me should be around 3.6 or 4.8 for a height. So maybe in main, just in main, 3.6. And for those who are confused by what numbers, if these seem very arbitrary, I'm using the golden rule, or the Fibonacci sequence, to create this. It actually turns out to be a really nice way of organizing architecting different styles and different sizes, commonly used in fonts. It's now popularly being used in buttons and vertical rhythm, for those who know the design term. So we need a few more values between main, and I usually do 4 is another one I'll often use. So medium, trying to flesh out some of the values between these. We've also got, we usually use 1.8. I might call this whatever. You guys can play with that. It's for the purpose of today's tutorial. It's really not important. The main thing is that we just have some values in there. But you can play with some of those optimal spacings yourself. And then another thing, where we might have shadows. Right. So Susie and for those who are working on Project CM, this is really what I'd love to see out of what we're doing. So we might have shadows, and we might say like, shadow 100, which is a very light shadow. Let's say, no X, maybe 10 pixels on the Y, 10 pixels blur. And we might say, I don't know if we can use other colors in here in the theme. Is that possible? Yeah, I feel like it might be. using theme values inside the theme. Do they have a thing like that in here somewhere? It's a very meta way of approaching it. Let's have a look. Doesn't look like it. So what we'll do is we'll take out these colors. Once colors equals. And let's just add a gray. So say gray 100. 100 being the lightest version of that. I'll just set this to say EE. And then in here, this 100 should match up with this 100, as you'd expect, and we'll say colors.gray 100. Right, so that's going to give us this value for this box shadow. Right, and then of course as we go further, you have all the way up to, I usually go up to 900. So 900 is the most intense. So hopefully you guys are getting some ideas onto some of the things we can change around some of the stuff that we're currently doing. So how do we use this? Well, we've got this theme file. Now, what this is asking us to do is create a provider. So I'm actually going to wrap our entire application in our root in this provider. This in provider, styled components, and then we simply pass in the theme. That's going to be imported from our theme lib, like this. And what that's going to do is give that as a add that for everything. All of our components now should have the theme available. Why is this? Okay, it's just out of date. VS Code's being VS Code. Cool. So what we've done here is by doing this, everything inside our application now, all of our styled components, because this is the root level, this is literally right at the beginning, all of our components will have access to the theme. That's the nice thing about React context and how that works. If you've used containers and unstated next, this is the same idea. But you can use the use container, but just doing the same thing using the React context API. So that is that. Any questions around how themes work and how we're providing them? We're about to jump into how we use them, but just before I do that, just want to make sure everyone's clear on how we're doing this and why we're deciding to go down this route. It's to avoid, and Susie, I'm not trying to blame you. Please don't take it this way. It's just to avoid things like this. If we imagine, and we're starting to get this way with our components now, we've got quite a few of them. This list is only going to grow. So, and this is just UI. If we go to, say, the client, we go to the components here, we've got a lot more. So all in all, we've got about 20, 25 components that we're building out. So, really approaching it from this angle with the theme allows us to change everything at once, which allows us to iterate on the designs much faster. So that's kind of the reasoning, just to recap why we're doing this. Okay, so that's the why. What about the how? How do we actually jump in and use these theme values? Let's go back to our component. Now I'm gonna copy what Susie's done for a second. I'm gonna create the app.styles.js. I'm going to export all these styled components. And of course, import all of them. Title, card, is that going to work? That's because we're not exporting them. Export, import here. Great. Okay, so now inside our, we need to import styled, import styled, there we go. Okay, so let's go back to our documentation and have a look at how they're using this. So it seems that the theme itself is provided as a property, which is pretty nifty. So let's go to a button as an example, and we'll change these. So we'll say, instead of return these arbitrary numbers, why don't we say props.theme colors, and we'll grab these guys here. So theoretically, nothing should break. There we go. Let's try and change it to something else, just to really make sure it's working. Yep, there we go. Let's change it our theme. All right, I'll change this to this primary to, say, purple. Excellent. So that is working exactly as we would expect it to. And in fact, we actually get a nicer, even nicer, this, where who can see how we can simplify this code? What can we do here? Anybody see a way of optimizing this for the clever cookies who are out there? I'm going to give you guys a second to think about it.
I'm seeing the case is the same as the props, teams, close, primary. So there's some pattern there.
Yeah.
You might be able to
Yeah. I like the way you think and train. So what if we did something like this? Background, props, color. Right? And we know how to give it a default color now, which is cool. So we'll do this in a second. We'll say p.color. We know that we can now do this. Props. Sorry, p.theme colors. p.color. Is that a little bit simpler? Okay. Which means I think we can get rid of all of this. I don't know if that's going to work. Why don't we put this in? Yeah. There we go. So now we have the issue. So this is much nicer. This is much nicer. And it works for these other two because if we remember, we're explicitly defining them. Color equals. But what about the default one? Right, if we come in here and we go color equals primary, and that will work. What if we don't want to do that? What if we just want to have the default one? Well, that's really where it was saying we can add these custom properties to it. So if we come in here and we do dot attributes, and we say color primary. We try. Well, look, that's overridden everything. We don't want that. Okay, so it's asking us to do it outside like this. Does that not give us the opportunity to do a default? I guess not. No matter. No matter. Same approach. So we'll come in here and we'll go button dot default props equals color. See if that works. And there we go. Now we can change this to something else like secondary. Make it green by default. Pressure. Now let's just look at what this is generating for us from a CSS perspective, from an HTML perspective. Oh, well, that's not very nice. It's actually created a HTML attribute. That probably shouldn't be there. So I don't know why that's creating that. That's technically not valid, but suppose that's the price you pay of using style components. Technically, that's not valid, but it's okay. There might even be an issue for that. Styled components generates. Yeah, we might have to find a way to remove that custom props. That really shouldn't be showing up, but anyway, that's another issue for another day. So we're starting to see the nature of how these things work, right? So let's go ahead and convert some more of our stuff. So maybe we have the border radius, right? I know we converted that, so we can go props t.themes theme.border radius. Again, let's change this to something ridiculous to see that it worked. say 100 pixels. Okay. Oh, that was the card. Okay, yeah. So we see the card, that works for the card. Right. I wonder if we can compose multiple things together. I wonder if it makes sense to do that inside the. So what I'm thinking is, could we do something like this? So border radius actually generates the property itself, border radius. I'm wondering if this is okay to do. Then we simply just get about the border radius like that. Does this work? Seems to. Close it like this. We'll try the same thing for the button. The button also has a border radius. No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, I just needed a semicolon. Add that semicolon in here then, so we don't even need it. Great. So that is actually allowing us to do multiple things together. Now, here's the really cool thing. I'm wondering if we can somehow actually combine multiple things together. So if we had like I don't know, what's a common thing that we might want to override? Say maybe like some textiles. So we might say like text main. It might be a combination of font family. Override the font families and buttons and input fields. Maybe we say font family, we add the fonts up here. So main, so Arial. Say font families, main, might say color, say colors.primary, or white actually. Might say font size. Again, we'll move these sizes out. I'm liking this. I'm liking this approach too. What do you guys think of this? What are you guys thinking of this approach? Maybe we've actually got a couple of things here. Now, if we use name, I don't know if this is technically the best way to do this, but I don't know if this is the styled components way. So we can actually get rid of this, and yeah. Why don't we try this to text button? We might use this in other places, like link text might have a very similar style. All right, so we'll say text transform this. Oh yeah, bold. Font weight. Bold. There might be a better way to do this by using some sort of like composability. Let's have a look. Style objects. No. I'm sure there's a way to do this. I'm realizing now this feels like the wrong thing to do. But the reason why is because if you are using this in multiple places, then every single place you do it is going to copy this. It's going to copy this CSS. Whereas if there's another way to do it, it might turn all of this into a class, and then you just compose that class. So it's a lot drier. The code is a lot smaller by the end. So I don't know if somebody knows how this works, then there might be a better example of this. Third-party stuff. Wow, they really got a lot of stuff in here. Yeah, but that's kind of the idea, right? Is to put all these things together and you call it text button. It's ridiculous looking. I'll bring that font size down. It's kind of ugly. Set it to small. Oh. Yeah. So you guys can play with this. But yeah, there's a lot of things we covered today in how style components works. But I think you guys are starting to see the benefits and the power of how themes work, and you know, this is a much nicer approach to, I think, styling than the Tailwind approach that we were running. You don't have to go and learn these different classes. You can just open up the styles and go, what is this component using? You know. So yeah, I'd really challenge you. I think if you're already using style components, I'm going to challenge you to use as much as possible in the theme. So let's really try and put as much as possible in here, like we had with Tailwind. Tailwind, we had a big theme object with all of our configuration. So it'd be really great to use. So any time that you're using a value inside CSS that's relevant to the theme or the style of how the page looks, as opposed to like positioning things around and like context specific. If it's more general, let's really try and put the values inside the theme, especially for components, the UI components. If it's more like you know, the client components or components that are specific to the use case, probably don't need to go in the theme. It's probably generic enough. Sorry, specific enough to write. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna leave it there unless somebody or anybody wants to talk about anything specific or any aspects of style components and how it compares to other things. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this webinar. I certainly learned a lot more about style components. It's been a good refresher. I'm going to hand it over to you guys for any questions that you have.
This is great, Tristan.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really appreciate how it fits together.
Yeah, it's cool, right? It's a really well thought out library. In fact, I think the person who made it comes from Melbourne. And I'm pretty sure I met him and went to one of his talks. Yeah, it's a really cool library. It's been around for a while, and it's definitely evolved since I last looked at it. They've got a lot of really cool.
I think Material UI uses some sort of concept from this, especially theme provider.
Yeah. I don't know. Material UI is agnostic. So I'm pretty sure I actually went for a job interview with them to work for Material UI as the company, and didn't get it. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's a custom thing that they wanted to move over to style components, but they're using something else at the moment. There was a piece of work that they were going to do for around that. I don't personally like Material UI. I don't like Material as a style. I think it's quite ugly personally. Kind of like Bootstrap. Everything looks the same. That's just my personal opinion. Everyone else has their own ideas. This is cool. I didn't know you could do this. This is zoom in here. This is actually allowing you to reference a parent component. This is really powerful. Holy moly. So what this is doing is saying for this component, if this icon is inside this component and this component is hovered, then give this component a background. That is some really fancy stuff. Yeah, look at that. So on the parent itself, like if I hover over the link, the icon changes color. And that's actually specified in the icon itself, not in here. Not in the link itself, but in the actual icon. That's really powerful. So what this means is that you can actually create contextual things inside your components to say, if this component lives inside another component, handle it differently. That's really cool. What else have they got? Let's go through some of the extra features just quickly. Look at theming. We've got refs. So for those who know refs and you know, exposing the individual HTML elements, so you can use that, which is cool. So this focuses the field on the hover, which is nice. What else they got? Security, sanitization, existing CSS. Does not render the passed in class name prop. No styles we applied. Okay. Some handles. What else have they got? What are the features? I'm talking here about naming conflicts. One thing I haven't seen is global styles. For those who are new to template strings, these are equivalent, just so you know. And this is how this function stuff works.
See the other type of template string. Can you do multi-line? Can you do multiple lines with the square brackets?
Yes.
Okay, so backtick basically replaces those normal bracket, square bracket, single quote.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And then you can also pass in values. So like this here, right?
This is oh, so you can't do the $sign curly bracket thing where you just that's much better than the first type. Is much better.
Yeah. So you can actually just use template strings on their own, like this, right? As we do, like as we're doing here, right? There's no functions here. But then this is actually using a tagged template function. So what this is doing is it's converting this template string, it's breaking it up. So it has this string, break, then this string, and then this this variable here. So there's some pretty awesome stuff you can get. They've written a blog article about it. The magic behind styled components. Server-side rendering. What else? Gatsby streaming. I didn't know you could stream. That's cool. If you got a large CSS style sheet, that's getting into some really optimized CSS right there. It's nice to know that supports it. Okay, not available in React Native. So for those, I don't know, Pia, if you're still with us, if you're building a mobile app, I've led you down the garden path. Apologies on that. I still haven't seen any global styles. If you can specify it in JavaScript as well, so you don't have to use the styled components, the backticks. So it's another nice way of doing it. Maybe they have some basics stuff. I really want to see the. A couple of things I want to research. I want to look at styled components, global styles. It's the first one. Then the second one is composing, like we were trying to do with our composing styles. They're the two things I want to look up. Oh, here we go. Create global style. Function to generate a special style component that handles global styles. Normally, style components are automatically scoped to a local CSS class and therefore isolated from other components. In the case of create global style, this limitation is removed, and things like CSS resets or base style sheets can be applied. Very, very nice. There you go. That's awesome. So that's how we can do. So Susie or whoever, if you guys want to set this up for the reset, and then also for base 10 on the font size. That way everything can be base 10. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you need some help, I can definitely help you as well. That would be a good thing to do, is look at those global styles. The second thing was composability. So the ability to combine patterns together. Let's have a look to see if they've got, because we want it to be agnostic. We don't want it to be specific to a component. Just prop picking. I think this is handling that issue that we had earlier today, where the color was showing up in HTML when it shouldn't have been. It seems like a pretty verbose solution, but yeah, see foo. So hopefully they address that in the actual library itself. But still doesn't. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. This is what we want, is the ability to combine multiple. You can do an extend, which is nice. Or inheriting. See if it's still an open issue, I think. Yeah. So composing, this looks like it's yeah. Looks like it's still a work in progress, but it looks like this is in the pipeline. Is the ability to, like we were doing with our theme, right? Where we have these multiple texts, but we shouldn't really be doing it in this way, because every time you use this, it's going to inject all of these different lines inside every single style component that you do it in. So there really should be a nicer way to compose these classes together. So I think that's coming down the pipeline as well. That would be a game changer for us. Yeah, it's a very actively maintained library, which is really nice. If we go to the GitHub, we see a lot of very active people. It's been updated. Oh no, maybe not. 26 days ago. So it's not too bad. Maybe that's just the master branch. I think that they're making stuff every day on this. So it's 30,000 stars on GitHub. It's a pretty safe library to use.
Is this like an open source?
Yep, completely open sourced.
Library?
Yep, like most things on GitHub, it's completely open sourced. Oh, this is GitHub's new design, by the way. So I'm seeing the feature preview. If you guys just want to see the old one, just refresh the page so it doesn't look so fancy. There you go. So yeah, a lot of people are using this. It's a pretty safe library to use. Yeah, so I'd say that's a wrap, team. I'm going to stop recording unless anybody else has any specific questions that they feels relevant to the discussion. But thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. 21 comments in the chat. So hopefully